was a trigger that caused life to go from non-sentient to sentient, I think sentience is just something that a sufficiently complex system develops eventually. And I think there are degrees of sentience or whatever, in the kingdom of life. I think a plant has more than a rock, but eventually, but almost none at the same time. But there's, to some degree, there has to be some. A bacterium has maybe a little bit more than a tree. I don't know. That's hard. I've never thought about that before, but still, an extremely small amount, about the same as like a sperm. But more complex life has more sentience. But we can just say it this way: I don't think anybody would think that a zygote has the same amount of sentience or a conscious experience like a human being does, but we were those at one time. So the idea that sentience or consciousness or whatever we want to call it can gradually emerge, well, we know that it does that. So I don't see why there was no like trigger that made it happen. Is just kind of an inevitable consequence. Like, I don't know, like could there be something natural like Earth? How do I say this?
Well, I'm asking this question with particular idea in mind, actually. So I have a theory on this, and I want to share it with you. And I just basically I'm interested if you think that it's possible at all. So my thinking is that we have outstanding thumb, right?
Outstanding what?
Thumb, the one of the fingers.
Oh,
the thumb.
Right. Okay.
Sorry for my pronunciation. So my thinking is, what if it's actually not the thumb that we learned how to use, but it's what made our brains bigger because of what opportunities it gave us. So what I'm saying is that evolutionarily, at some point, we got this outstanding thumb. And let's be clear, there are other species and other kinds of apes that have outstanding thumbs. It's okay. They just didn't go through this evolutional path, right? But for some reason, we human beings, Homo sapiens, we somehow were able to use thumb as a kind of like a triggering factor that triggered this brain development. What if it's actually, you know what I mean?
Well, I think it's probably a combination of a ton of things like that. Like, for example, there's no real reason for an animal that grazes on grass to become that much smarter than it is, because it navigates a world that is pretty darn simple. And, you know, animals like that are notoriously, I don't know what the word is, skittish. Like they run at even the hint of the idea, of the smell, of the suggestion of danger, right? Pronghorn antelope are a notorious example of that. But for organisms like us, so why is it that humans ended up this way? Well, probably one of the reasons is being arboreal, living in trees, and eating fruit means that it's necessary to navigate, we navigate a more complex world. Historically, we always have, our ancestors always have. And so there's selective pressure to like discern different types of foods and fruits to be able to maybe tell the better, or to be able to tell like the difference between the way different kinds of things taste and how they look. And living in the trees is more complex, like the environment. I don't know. I guess I don't know if complex is the right. Well, I mean, yeah, it's like walking on a sidewalk versus trying to navigate through a jungle gym. It's more complex, right? Now the thing about like our free hands, this is kind of like it's almost like a necessity is the mother of invention sort of thing, except backwards. So like our free hands and our thumbs allowed us to be able to manipulate our environment. And so it's not like that made us be that way, but we unlocked the potential to start manipulating our environment in more intricate ways. And so that sort of puts pressure, or it opens up the opportunity for the brain to start working in those more complex and abstract ways. So, yeah, I mean, I think those things, your original question, I was thinking about life in general, but why did humans end up doing this instead of other organisms? That's an interesting question. But, you can look at an animal that's one of the most distantly related to us is the octopus. And there are some really cool books about them and how they're so complex and intelligent. And I think a lot of the same kind of stuff applies because they have all those arms and because they are prey. They can manipulate their environment in all these interesting ways. And I think that's just created the opportunity and like pressure for them to just become such sophisticated thinkers and doers like we are, but in a different way.
But yes, I agree that there are species like I heard that whales are extremely sophisticated. I think elephants are amazing, like in the sense that also that they have basically culture and they have burial sites and all that stuff, and they come back to the places where they lost the loved ones and all that stuff. But there's this particular example that I think about a lot: ping pong. My thinking is so. If you think about this, if you're smart and agile and all these things, right, you can invent ping pong. Yeah, okay, that works. But what if it's actually reverse? What if actually our ability to play ping pong or do something like that, something so extremely, you know what I mean? Because to me, it's just something absolutely unachievable for other species because we are capable of seeing the ball spinning in the air. We can read the opponent movements, right? Our movements are so precise. It's absolutely insane what we can do with that. And my thinking is, what if actually ping pong or something like this, I'm just giving it as an example, is the reason we are what we are today? You know what I mean?
So what you're saying is, in Soviet Russia, ping pong invent you.
Yeah, I'm from human. Russia, if you guess right. Yes.
Oh, really? That's funny. So, humans really do like athletics is something I've thought about with this regard. Like the fact that like the computing power in our brains that goes into if I go outside, like I don't regularly do sports anymore, but I can go outside with my dad. We actually did this not that long ago and throw a football to each other. And I can like unbalance myself, throw the ball at a weird angle up in the air, and it's going to land within a 5-foot radius of him like every single time. But we're not calculating velocity, angle, acceleration of gravity, anything like that. It just comes so incredibly natural to us. And there aren't really any other organisms that are good throwers like that. I mean, like archerfish can spit water, but like, not very far. Yeah. But anyways, I think that most of that stuff, we have these very complex computers in our brain. And I think all of that other stuff is, there are a lot of things that come with that. So, or how am I, I don't know. Yeah. So there are a lot of things that come with that. Like, for example, inventing culture and language and passing on information generation after generation. But I've read some books that say that give pretty compelling arguments that those are just basically side effects, unintended side effects of why do we have such huge brains? Because we are social creatures. Now, there are other social creatures like ants and termites and birds and things like that. But like a beehive or an ant colony, it basically acts as a mind. The individuals are only they don't need to be very sophisticated. We can compare them to a neuron in the brain. One neuron in one human's brain doesn't have the capacity to do or know anything, but 100 billion of them has the capacity to do what we do. And a termite colony is made, I think it's very appropriate to think of it like it's a mind, like it's a brain, and then the individuals that can only emerge out of all the individuals having this complex behavior and division of labor sort of thing. But anyways, I'll try to wrap this up here. It comes from the social thing because like for humans, we have complex theory of mind. And so our brains didn't evolve to do math and music and things like that. They evolved to be able to look at another person and be able to have a mental model in our brain of what is happening in that person's brain based solely on the expression on their face, for example, which seems like the most incredibly basic thing to us, but that's extraordinarily difficult to actually do. Yeah. Or like another example is if I showed you a Where's Waldo thing or like a picture that's a collage of many things, and I said, find the flower, a human can do that in just a couple of seconds usually, whereas computers are just barely now starting to be able to do that, but a computer can calculate a math problem involving two 100-digit numbers instantaneously.
But on this social thing and brains being big because of social development, as you said, what if it's also consequence? What if we are able to be social on this level and recognize the patterns on the faces because something extraordinary happened before, and I'm bringing them up. Something that our nervous system is just capable of doing on such a rapid scale. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's such a huge computation power that is in the brain right now for human beings that we don't realize that we have, and it just opens all these gates for us, so we can now read the face. We can now build communication. We can build like amazing things. But something else happened before, and that's why I asked you initially, what do you think the trigger is? Because I think there is a trigger, and this is some kind of like evolutional development that happened to us. And I'm bringing them up because to me it's like something super basic that we don't think about, but something that puts us so far apart from every other species on the planet.
Yeah, I mean, so I haven't thought about it too much, but I would refer to the answers I gave before, like our primate lineage, where we lived and the types of diets we had. I think those were extremely it probably couldn't have happened unless those things also happened, and eventually having free hands to be able to manipulate the world and these types of like fingers.
Sagranda describes it very interesting. He says that we are very weird creatures because we are prey, essentially, historically, but we have our eyes in the front of our heads. Other like preys, right? They always have on the side of their skulls.
Yeah.
And we need to have them because we were jumping over the trees.
Yeah,
and to
depth
be able
perception.
To calculate the distance. It's such a big topic too. But anyway, thank you for your answer.
Oh yeah, you're very welcome. I was just gonna say there's been this popular idea that when humans started cooking food, that unlocked enough nutrients, and our brains rapidly grew after that. But I think most of the archaeological evidence around that says, no, we already had big brains by the time we were cooking food. So we don't think that really is what happened.
For sure. I think, again, I refer to Roy Casagrande. He says that agricultural revolution was inevitably, it was inevitable for us to develop, but not because we wanted to. It was environmental pressure because hunting and gathering was never enough at this point. And we had to scale it up because population was growing and we had to support this population. And that's like, it's never was like a development or a revolution that we were like, oh my God, now we're able to grow crops and it's how amazing we are. It's just, unfortunately, we have to do this shit.
Yeah.